Hello and welcome to Love Muslims Critique Islam Part 5 Women. Throughout this series of videos, I'll be sharing with you the truth of Islam that you won't get from the mainstream media and you won't get from Muslims. So let me reveal to you the secrets Imams don't want you to know and take you on a journey of absolute truth. There is little in Islam to satisfy the feminist. If you do a before and after Islam comparison of women's rights and women's lifestyles, you get two differing pictures. See, the picture of women when Muhammad was married to his first wife, Khadija, is vastly different to the situation which arose after she died. Family life, therefore, after this event, are contrasting. And Khadija was a businesswoman in her own right, and as an employer of Muhammad was in fact his boss. And women had more rights pre-Islam, so could be actually leaders in society even, and also even polygamy was allowed for women then, so they could have more than one husband before the beating was allowed. Women so had well, they had divorce rights. They could own property. They could represent themselves in court. So just generally a far more equal society then. But after Khadija's death came the death of gender equality, and the role of the woman became a stay-at-home housewife, unless her family financial difficulty dictated that she needed to go to work. But she still had to be required to keep the housekeeping duties, and the husband is really seen as the protector and the provider for the family, and very much head of the household. And in pre-Islam, so for example, there was no enforcement of the wearing of the veil, for this was something that was introduced in the Quran. And after Khadija, women were required to dress less provocatively, have a whole body covered, and hair is covered as well. And in some more Islamic states, the face veil would be included in the dress code. So a lot more of a different picture. So women are expected to stay at home, as I said, and she needs a male relative's permission to venture out. See, the more restrictions on her, actually, the higher the family honour, and so it's very much dependent on her obedience and modesty. So it's also one of the reasons why Western women are seen as having less value, and are seen also as easy meat, as we've seen described in recent gang rape cases in the UK. Now, as a woman is easily given in to temptation, she cannot therefore be trusted. So she must be, that's the reason why she must be covered and chaperoned. Women are considered as possessions, and they find themselves having less control over their lives, and they become second-class citizens rather than as equals. And women are seen also as being less intelligent and are lacking in morals, and so they need a male guidance and control. We read this in Sahih al-Bukhari 2658, where the Prophet's having a conversation with a woman and referring to the Sharia court system. He says, he asks, isn't the witness of a woman equal to half that of a man? And the woman says, well, yes. He said, well, this is because of the deficiency of her mind. And so it's her lack of intelligence as the justification in their eyes for valuing a woman's testimony as worth that half of a man's. Also, Muhammad states that in hell, mostly women will be there, and this is because they tend to curse and are grateful to their husbands, and are lacking in common sense. And It's the reason for their deficient minds that is the that leads to this lack of common sense. And we read this in Sahih Muslim 142, where Muhammad says, "O women folk, you should give charity and ask much forgiveness, for I saw you in bulk amongst the dwellers of hell." And the reference to most women being in hell, well, just gives them even less hope of getting a place of paradise. Allah is going to decide whether their good deeds were good enough for entry, but most won't be there anyway because they were ungrateful to their spouses, apparently. Um, the men are in charge of women and are allowed to beat them. So that being the case, it's not difficult to understand why these wives are ungrateful. And so those few women who do actually make it to paradise, they'll have a pleasure of honoring their husbands who are allowed to beat them here on earth. So it doesn't seem like paradise much to me. Marriage life and marriage law tends to favor the man, as polygamy is allowed in Islam, and they can even benefit from temporary marriages of convenience. So if a man, for example, is away from his wife and he wants to visit a prostitute, he is allowed to have a muta marriage, and where he marries a woman temporarily, lasting for up to about 1 hour, and then quickly divorce her as soon as his deed is done, and as fast as he can zip up his trousers. Um, of course, for men, divorce is a lot easier, as all he needs to do is repeat "I divorce you" 3 times. Love before the marriage is not always necessary and is expected to grow as the years pass and within time. But Muslim girls are taught from young not to expect love from her husband, but from her children. Arranged marriages are allowed in Islam, and it's been known for people to refuse arranged marriages, and it's increasingly happening in the West by modern Muslim women who are sometimes tricked into going on holiday to the country of their ancestors, only to find their marital fate has been sealed. But this will bring great shame on the families concerned and has led to the cases of honor killings. So we see a conflict between the generations here. Two Quranic verses in particular come down hard on women. Surah 4:15 in the Quran calls for the death of lewd women, and Surah 4:34 allows corporal punishment, even if you think she may have disobeyed. So we read this, but those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then, if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally struck them. But if they obey you once more, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand. That's sort of 4:34. And the word strike here is in this verse is means to hit in the original Arabic language that we are encouraged by Muslims to read the Quran in. So we have to go by the original Arabic. Girls need to be virgins if they are to marry, and marriage in Islam is for women a duty and a godly gift, and is really it's a contract where a gift of money is paid for the exclusivity of a bride, and anybody remaining single is committing a sin, and remaining childless is a concept in Islam that just doesn't make sense. Usually there is an agreement between two families for the marriage pairing. This is a pairing of convenience and is often arranged at the Hajj. So it's more seen as a business contract than a love match of two people, especially if the marriage is arranged outside the family, where the reason for permission to marry could be for status, for example, or financial gain. And almost all Islamic marriages are arranged, and commonly the bride and groom will be related as first or second cousins. And with some couples, they might not even meet until the very day of their marriage. Interfaith marriages are only allowed for men, and provided that the bride, converts to Islam and the children are brought up as Muslims. As women are inferior to men, they have less legal rights, and a Sharia court system is heavily weighed against her. It makes things difficult, though not impossible, for her to obtain a divorce, which now, as then, involves a Sharia court system that is pro-male and not supportive of her. And it considers a woman's testimony as worth half that of a man's, as I said before, and therefore 2 female witnesses are needed for every 1 man's. So for divorce proceedings, as indeed in any case brought up by a woman against a man, she needs therefore these 2 witnesses to his 1. As refusing to marry your chosen partner is a hugely humiliating experience for the respective families. Divorce is even more so, so it's even worse. A wife's family could share in the humiliation should she leave her husband, and would disown her no matter what treatment she had caused her to leave. And if a divorce is granted, the wife will lose her children, as she's the one that instigated the divorce proceedings, or if she leaves Islam, except if the children are still being breastfed. So until that baby is on solids, they have to remain with the mother until that point. And for injury compensation cases, a woman still will get half that of a man receives, and it's the same for family inheritance as well. So where a daughter would only get half of what her brother gets. As the Sharia court system is heavily biased against women, some rape victims are seen as culprits in this crime and can receive punishments ranging from imprisonment to a flogging or death by stoning, as is happening widely in Pakistan. Now, you see, the behavior and attitude to women by Islamic terrorists, for example, or rape gangs come from Muhammad's example of how he treated women. This is where they get it from. Women were captured and distributed to Muhammad's followers as booty or as a prize. And in the media, these high-profile rape gangs cases recently in the UK have they describe the perpetrators as men of Pakistani origin. Now, this is not fair for law-abiding men of Pakistan, because what they have in common, these perpetrators, is Islam, and what the media is doing is suppressing the ugly and thorny truth that Islam is the problem, not the fact that they're from Pakistan. Female genital mutilation, or FGM, which is the practice of cutting a clitoris, has been illegal in the UK for over 3 decades, whilst finally political correctness had been pushed aside long enough for the banning of this practice to be put in statute. But even though to date there have been no successful prosecutions, despite that about 130,000 Muslim women in Britain have had this performed on them here or abroad. Now, Muslim scholars agree that female circumcision is a recognized Islamic practice, though many Islamic apologists would deny this. So it is simply not true, therefore, to claim that FGM has nothing to do with Islam, nor is it true to say it is only an African problem and that some would like to have us believe. Some Muslims point to Surah 4 verse 1 and Surah 4:5 for equality for women and proof that women are to be treated with kindness. But both these verses are abrogated by the verses that follow in this same chapter, chapter 4, which is littered with verses which deny women's rights. So, for example, we read that there is polygamy. Women are given less inheritance. It calls for the death of sexual women, their obedience to men, the allowance of physical punishment. You see, the degrading of women is rife in Islam and is supported by men who are allowed to marry slave girls again in this chapter, and also that they excel women. So it's a real put down. And there are stipulations of how women should behave in Islam, with verses on how to speak to avoid seducing a man, and call for women to stay in houses and act modestly. So the verses that stipulate how women are to behave, they underline the control that men have over women in Islam. There are stipulations on how to speak, stay in houses, obey Muhammad as you obey Allah. Muhammad's privileges can take women offering themselves. He takes wives as he wishes. Muhammad's number of wives are limited except slaves he's attracted to. You can't talk to Muhammad's wife unless it's behind a screen. Do not annoy Muhammad or marry any of his wives after death. And as I read before, men are in charge of women, and men can beat their wives. So, this behavior, an example for men on how to treat women, just comes from Muhammad's example of how he treated them. So let's look at the merry wives of Muhammad, shall we? After Muhammad's first wife, Khadija, died, Muhammad married Sauda bint Zama. Just a few days after her first marriage was annulled when her husband converted to Christianity. She was an early convert to Christianity, and he married her when he was unpopular and bankrupt. He considered divorcing her because she was the oldest and plainest of his wives, as she was fat and very slow. And he did not find her attractive when she was in her 40s. But she pleaded not to be cast off and to be kept within the household for protection, but on condition that she would forfeit her sexual rights to Aisha, his child bride. I think that pleased him immensely, I think. When a wife thinks her husband will leave her, it's down to her, you see, to do all she can to aid reconciliation, which is what Sauda is doing here by foregoing her sexual rights, and therefore blame would not fall upon her. You see, it was Muhammad's will that he would assign a specific day of visitation for sex to keep all his wives happy. And Sauda was saying, well, I will give up my day in bed with you, provided you just keep me on your household. Zainab bint Jahsh, she was the wife of his adoptive son Zayd, Muhammad's first cousin, and married Muhammad after he received convenient revelation allowing his adopted son to divorce her so that the marriage to Muhammad could take place. You see, whenever Muhammad is questioned about the morality of his behavior, he would often have these revelations of convenience giving him permission to carry on doing what he wanted to do. And so he gave the instruction for adopted sons to be called by their blood father's name, or if you didn't know that, called them brothers in faith. And this now reverts any adopted son to their original family name, if known, and to render them unadopted, thus bringing the end to the practice of adoption. Didn't know that, did you? Rihanna bint Zaid, Ibrahim Amir, was a wife of a Jew and made a widow and was taken as a slave during the Banu battle when 750 men were killed. Having been made a widow by Muhammad, she refused to convert and so was kept as a concubine as prize, but still married her anyway. Um, Now, another wife whose name I always struggle to pronounce, so I'm not even going to pronounce that or attempt to. There it is on the screen. You have a go if you want to. She was she was another wife of a Jewess, and also taken as booty, and was said to be very beautiful. She was the wife of a chief who was defeated in battle around about 628 AD. She tried to buy her freedom, but she caught Muhammad's eye, and he married her at the age of 58 when she was just 20 years old. And Aisha was supposed to be really quite jealous of her beauty. Sophia bint Huai, yes, another name I can't pronounce either, was the 17-year-old wife of another Jewish chief. Kaiba Kanana, and was forced to become Muhammad's wife when her husband and cousins were tortured and burned at the stake to reveal the whereabouts of their hidden wealth at yet another siege. I think it's the Battle of Khaybar around 629 AD, which was won by Muhammad when the Jews surrendered. Zavia's father, brother, uncles, cousins, and husband were all subsequently killed. A pattern emerges with captured women taken as slaves that takes Muhammad's fancy, to where he offers their freedom from slavery in exchange to becoming his wife, provided they convert to Islam. When Muhammad went to his wife Hafsa for her day of sex visitation, he found her not around, but instead came across Hafsa's slave girl and had sex with her instead. She was a beautiful Coptic Christian called Mariah bint Shamun al-Qibtiyya, who was a gift from the governor of Egypt. Mariah fell pregnant, but unfortunately, the baby didn't survive. And Aisha was very jealous, and both women refused to sleep with Muhammad, which led Muhammad to receive another of his convenient revelations from Allah, threatening to replace them with better wives for him if they didn't start towing the line. And Muhammad's convenient hotline to Allah came in handy once more when Salama Hind bint Abi Umayyah, another one of his wives, complained she was being ignored. Muhammad had a growing reputation as a philanderer by this time, and some women found this attractive and offered themselves to Muhammad, which didn't always go down well with the families, as shown in these words of one particular father who says, "You are a self-respecting girl, but the Prophet is a womanizer." When Muhammad was attacking the family of Mulaika bint Ka'b, they gave their beautiful daughter to appease him, but he killed them anyway, and because of that, she demanded a divorce. Fatima al-Alaya bint Zabian al-Dakhak converted to Islam when she married Muhammad. But she was a bit naughty and was caught spying on men in the mosque courtyard, and she was divorced. Life got a bit smellier after that when she was assigned to dung collecting duties. And so we come to Aisha bint Abu Bakr, Muhammad's 6-year-old child bride. And I will leave the last word to Muhammad, comparing this favorite wife of his with his favorite meal. When we read this in Sahih al-Bukhari 3411, where he says, Many amongst men reached the level of perfection, but none amongst the women reached this level except Asiah, Pharaoh's wife, and Mary, the daughter of Imran. And no doubt the superiority of Aisha to other women is like the superiority of Farid to other males. Says it all really. And till next time, goodbye.